Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is my Forbes colleague, staff writer Zach Everson. Zach, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me again, Brittany.
This is an update to a story you and I have talked about before. You've reported before that President Donald Trump's felony convictions could impact his ability to sell alcohol. So before we get into the update here, can you explain why his legal licenses were potentially in jeopardy?
Sure. So as everybody I'm sure remembers, Donald Trump was found guilty of 34 felony counts of falsifying business records back in May 2024, related to hush money payments made to Stormy Daniels. At that point, I went through and I looked up the business laws of in the states where his businesses operate. New Jersey law prohibits individuals convicted of crimes involving moral turpitude of having liquor licenses, and according to a state handbook. So I reached out to them and asked, are you going to be looking into any of the liquor licenses at Donald Trump's 3 clubs in the state? They got back and said, yes, we are taking a look at the liquor license in 2 of them. And, we're waiting on sentencing before we make any final decisions on that. So sentencing got delayed. So New Jersey made it still delayed. And then, of course, the sentence was largely just dropped when Trump was reelected. And we didn't hear anything back from New Jersey. So I followed up with them again recently.
So let's get back to what that sentence exactly was. It was after President Trump was elected for a second term, before he was sworn in. So this was at the beginning of January. He was officially sentenced to an unconditional discharge. So can you explain what exactly that means before we get into then the liquor license aspect of this all?
Sure. I saw a lot of speculation online. It would just be a great name for a band, but unconditional discharge means that they are just not pursuing the case anymore. It's done. The felony conviction stands, but there's not going to be any sort of punishment at all there.
So felony conviction stands, no punishment. Where does that leave the New Jersey liquor licenses? What are they doing at those clubs?
That leaves the liquor license. Losing a liquor license is possibly the only indication he will face legally as a result of those 34 felony convictions. So the clubs were denied their request to renew their permits back last year. And since then, New Jersey has just continued to issue them temporary permits. So they are continuing to pour while they wait for a decision to be made. Most recently, New Jersey extended the temporary licenses until April 30th of this year. Now, previously, there was supposed to be a hearing, at which point the burden sounded like it was going to be on the clubs to prove they were in compliance with the law. So New Jersey will just continue to issue temporary permits, but we will, find out what the answer is, I guess, come May 1st.
If I've worked at country clubs growing up for years, and alcohol is central to the country clubs, at least I worked at. I mean, people go, they get drinks, they get dinner, they play a round of golf. I mean, if you take that away, it really, really would impact the business. Has winning the White House in November, has it seemed, helped President Trump at all when it comes to these liquor licenses?
Yeah. Good question. Yeah, I don't have the experience in country clubs. I went to college in the 90s, though, and I watched Caddyshack dozens and dozens of times. So I certainly understand what goes on at those places. What helped is that by winning the presidency, it got the felony conviction, basically no punishments there, and New Jersey just kept kicking this down the road. And, if he had not won the presidency, what New Jersey did would have still been contingent on what New York's did for with the sentencing, but it certainly helped.
And you and I have talked plenty of times about various loopholes that President Trump has found himself when it comes to his businesses. Are there any possible loopholes now?
Well, his Trump organization has argued that the liquor licenses aren't even in his name, which is actually correct. Like, you do not see the name Donald Trump on those liquor licenses. But as we went through and showed that they are owned by a chain of companies of which the eventual sole owner is the Donald Trump Revocable Trust, of which he is the sole beneficiary and the sole person to put assets in. And the state of New Jersey agreed with that conclusion, and that Trump does have a beneficial ownership of these licenses. One way to get around this would be to put the licenses in Don Jr.'s name or transfer it somehow to a different company that he does not have control of. Or it's also possible that the commission just may say, you know what, never mind, you're fine. So who knows? We'll get some more insight on May 1st.
It's really interesting that when you're thinking about President Trump being convicted of felony charges, this could really be one of the only punishments that he faces. I'm curious, what exactly are you looking out for next year ahead of that April 30th date?
Yeah, that's a great question. I just don't know if the Trumps are gonna put out any more statements to try to get ahead of that. If we're gonna see any restructuring of the trust, or who owns these clubs. If that is the case, though, I don't think we'd see it in disclosures for a while. Although I guess we could see new liquor licenses filed in the names of new companies. So it's really kind of up in the air until they have that hearing. What might take place.
And could one of the outcomes of this hearing be, hey, we're just going to keep with status quo, we'll give you another 90-day permit? Is that an option too?
It certainly seems like he could get more time on this. They've extended the temporary permit several times so far. I haven't seen anything in the guidelines that said there is a cap to the amount of times that they can extend it. It's certainly possible such a cap does exist, but like I said, I haven't come across it. So it certainly seems like that is a possibility.
President Trump has other golf courses around the country, not just in New Jersey. Are his liquor licenses in New Jersey, are those the only ones that are potentially in jeopardy?
Yeah, we reached out to every other state where he has a liquor license. And in a lot of cases, they just flat out said, the liquor licenses aren't in his name. They're a company. I responded saying, well, it is a company of which he is the sole beneficial owner, or trust of which he is the sole beneficial owner. And they didn't seem to care. There is a lot of wiggle room in how you define, who's of the right character to hold a liquor license. It doesn't flat out say if you've been convicted of felonies and falsifying business records, you can't have it. A lot of them use phrases, including involving moral turpitude, like they do in New Jersey, and that's up to some nation. New Jersey, they define it as a category that includes dishonesty, fraud, or depravity, severe enough to be punishable by more than a year in prison. And that certainly meets the criteria, but it also left them some room on how they wanted to interpret it, and they interpreted it as if they do think it matters. So we'll see.
I'm curious, this seems like a chicken and the egg situation. Was New Jersey thinking this mattered and you caught on to it, or did this come to your attention beforehand and you brought it to New Jersey's Attorney General?
Excellent question. I don't know for sure what happened there. I hadn't seen any reports or any evidence that they were investigating. I reached out. They said, we'll get back to you. And when they got back to me, they said, we're investigating. So not quite.
So if a golfer in New Jersey can't have their, after hole 9 beer, they know who to blame. Zach Everson, thanks so much for joining me.
There are other country clubs in New Jersey. I do not believe the two Trump clubs in question are it, but yes.